Hello, my name is John Geissler. I'm the St. John's Abbey land manager and the director of the St. John's Outdoor University. Today I'm going to talk to you about how to get young oaks started in your woodlands. So why is it so important to get oaks started? Uh, some of the biggest reasons are right here. Biodiversity. We just had a talk last fall by Dr. Talamy, who spoke about kind of powerhouse genre of plants. Different plants that pack the most ecological punch. So, and the top of that list is oaks. He uses the example of oaks supporting over 400 species of caterpillars, over 100 species of invertebrates. Just really a backbone of the ecosystem, and important that we have it as a component of our woodlands. Um, it's really, as you'll see in this presentation, there's a lot of challenges with getting oaks started, but they last a long time once you get over that initial hurdle. But only 6.5% of the oak in Minnesota is less than 20 years old. And there's threats on the way. Gypsy moth and oak wilt, if they're not already in your areas, are kind of headed our direction. So it's really important that we have some young, resilient oaks there to be a part of our ecosystems. So I'm going to zoom in here and talk a little bit about our efforts here at St. John's. Uh, we're located just west of St. Cloud in the central part of the state. You can see Interstate 94 there and our close to 3,000 acres that we manage. And as you see on this slide, a lot of our forest is oak dominated. So all the dark orange are oak dominated stands. The native plant communities, for those that are interested, this is a MHC 36, Central Mesic Hardwoods. So my goal, and I think the goal of many landowners, is to have a healthy, resilient landscape. And to do that, you need a diversity of native species and a diversity of age classes and structures. Here at St. John's, we have a diversity of species, but our weakness is a diversity of age classes. And the reason for that, you can kind of see in the blue, our oak forests, a lot of them are 120 to 150 years old. And the reason for that is in the late 1800s, you can see how the chimneys up here on our quad building was all heated by wood. So there was a lot of harvesting done, a lot of clear cuts in our woods, and all used for firewood. And without many deer at that time, and more wildfires, a lot of this woods came back as nice, beautiful oak forest. And so in the late 1990s, we were starting to think about this issue and how do we get young oaks established here. So we kind of went through the traditional silvicultural methods where you wait for a good acorn year, then you come through and log out a shelter wood. So we're trying to get the woods down to about 60 basal area, and we're leaving the best oaks to drop acorns down on that ground. And you can see the soil maybe a little scraped up to get mineral soil contact with those acorns. And then you get young oaks started. They start popping up. You see them here. And that's good. And then we're using some prescribed fire, kind of knock back some of that competition that wants to grow as you have increased sunlight down to the forest floor. And collecting acorns and having the state nursery grow those for us and kind of supplement with artificial regen in areas that didn't come back with the natural regen, just to make sure we had good coverage of oaks throughout our regeneration area. And it worked. All these red ribbons are on oak seedlings, and we thought we're good to go, but then the deer, we come through and mow off everything. This anything knee height or above is just eaten for sure by our high deer populations here. And this is kind of what you're left with after that shelterwood. I call this a failed shelterwood. It's just all ironwood in here. The deer don't like to eat the ironwood, and everything else is mulched down by the deer browse. So then the next course of action in our adaptive management, we started to do deer protection with different methods. One method was using these tree shelters or tree tubes, and kind of mixed results. It seemed like on the edges were full sun. They did better than inside partial shade conditions. We built deer exclosures, 6 of them, different sizes using different materials, and we got some results inside, but a lot of them were not getting past the competition. You can see how thick it is in some of these areas. It's just everything wants to grow, and it's hard if you're a little oak down at my feet to get past. You just sit there and sit there and sit there, and then eventually the energy reserves go away, and you're not able to penetrate through that. So the key was sunlight. The next key, so we need deer protection and we need sunlight down to those seedlings. And so within those deer fences, you can see the different sizes. So this was 4 acres, this is 20 acres, 4 acres, 4, and a 1 acre. And we broke those into different areas and really started opening it up and taking care of the seedlings so they had a window up to the sunlight. And we use these Vispor mats. They're 3 foot by 3 foot. They allow moisture to go through, but they don't allow the competition to come up right by the seedling. And then we use that kind of as a buffer, and then we go around and with buzz saws and kind of cut off the competition a couple times a year, especially when they're young. And just this was just after one growing season, having that access to sunlight gets a little more robust. This is kind of that work around the mats. And you start to get results. You see these nice oaks. They've gotten past the competition now and they're free to grow. Some more examples. They're starting to put on, once they get past that competition, 1.5 to 2 feet of growth per year. And this one, 12 feet tall, ready to roll, ready to go for a couple hundred years. So that's the main goal. This is another technique we're using. Again, we take a failed shelterwood like this, and we're starting to cut these strips. We don't want to add any more deer exclosures to our land. They just tend to stay on the landscape forever, and we don't want to have so many fences on our landscape. So we've cut these 100-foot wide strips orientated primarily north and south to kind of give that shading effect, but allow us to get oaks going and not have to re-enter this area again to take the overwood off or the mature oaks. And so as we're taking off those trees, it's typically done again after a good acorn year, and you scrape all that ironwood down to the ground, just lightly scraping the ground so you get good contact between the acorns and the soil. This is what those strips look like right after the harvest. And then a lot of volunteers are cutting these cages, basically about 70, I can't remember the exact number, but around 70 inches long. And then that makes a 2-foot diameter cage. If you get a 100-foot roll, you'll get 16 cages out of that. And then we roll in the snow, we slide those cages out and kind of get them positioned about every 15 feet. So about 200 cages per acre. And This is where we have it all staged out. We have 2 pieces of rebar with every cage, and then we wait for the acorns to sprout. So you can see an acorn here, and just I love look at the root they put down before they even putting up leaves. They're just built to get that root down there a long ways. And you can see how successful scraping that soil is. Look at all these oak seedlings. They're just everywhere. So you just pick one of those every 15 feet, put a cage around it. And then the most important thing is you have to keep on the competition for a couple of years just to, there's a seedling down in here, and all this other stuff is coming around it and trying to choke it out. And we started to we're trying out these little cans as well. We'll see if we continue to do that. Helps with from voles chewing them off. Helps a little bit if we decide to water them, keep the water right on them. And if we weed whip around here, it's a nice barrier to protect the tree. And you can see kind of what it looks like as we're taking care of these and what the cages look like. The cages just work wonderful. And we use the rebar actually to hold the cages together. So they're cut, but we just use the rebar to thread those through and hold them. And this was an acorn at the beginning of this growing season, and it's up 20 inches already. So just phenomenal growth if they have sunlight, moisture, and ready to roll, and deer protection. So you may be thinking, well, this is a lot of work, but it gets results. And we do less trees per acre but we're really taking care of making sure they make it through. So the tree cage with the Vispor mat is about $12 per tree, which is a lot. But I'm confident we'll be able to use those cages on the next generation. So we'll just move over to the next strip that we did not harvest, move our cages over, and then it cuts the cost in half. You do that one more rotation and you're down to a third the cost. So that's what I'm hoping for. The pros and cons of deer exposure. The nice thing about a deer exposure is you're protecting more than just the trees. You're protecting that understory layer and all the woodland wildflowers that are down on the forest floor. The cons are that deer can get in. You can have to continuously monitor them after every windstorm, and just deer jump in the fence. Especially the larger deer exposures, we've had a real problem with deer getting in, and they can eat away all your work in a pretty quick time, years of work. The pros of those, the strip regeneration harvest with individual tree cages, I talked about it. The cages can be used more than once. They'll be moved in 7 to 10 years to the next strip. And then it puts the deer to work doing some of the annual weeding. So the deer are meandering through in between those cages, and they're mulching off a lot of the maples and ash, and some of that competition is actually getting eaten down. It's easy to find the seedlings when you have that cage around them. For oak wilt, it's kind of a built-in safety strip between our mature stands. So we have this buffer where the roots are not grafted together of our mature trees. And so we can kind of contain areas of oak wilt proactively. You don't have to worry about the deer getting in. If one cage tips over or gets hit by a tree, it's no problem. You just lose that one, or you're not losing the whole works. And then there's no re-entry to take off the overwood where you're kind of slicing everything off again, having to get kind of regen from that. So the cons are it's a high initial cost and labor, and it only protects the trees. So if you ever want to come out and visit and take a look at our different methods, there's a lot happening with different techniques. We've been doing this for over 20 years. So if you ever want to come out and visit, I'd be more than happy to take you out on a tour. And just some kind of the recipe we've been working on here is got to remember the acorns, the mineral soil contact, sunlight and moisture. And then the keys that where you come in is the 7 years of deer protection in some manner. And the 4 years of understory competition control are critical, especially at that early stage. And of course, invasive species control. It'd be very difficult to do this in a buckthorn thicket. So you really have to take care of making sure those invasives don't invade your forest. And that equals an oak forest for future generations. So this doesn't have to be done on the stand level. If you have a small woodland and you have 1 or 2 oak seedlings coming up, you could get 2 cages, welded wire tree cages, put them around those, and then gradually start adding sunlight, whether that means taking down some mature ironwood around those oaks or maples, just to allow them to get up and get started. And just one time, finally, you can't just take care of protecting them from the deer, and you can't just take care of controlling the understory competition. You have to do both in order to get these, especially in these real high deer populations and these kind of nutrient-rich sites where everything wants to grow. And with that, I just wanted to kind of end on this note. This tree cookie is blew down, the top blew off of it in 2017, and we counted back the rings. It was a white oak, and it was 241 years old. So this was an acorn in 1776. So all the work that you put in, it seems like a lot and a big investment, but that investment could be benefiting the ecosystem until the year 2262. So just think about the impact you can be making by getting some of these oaks started. So with that, I want to thank you for listening, and I look forward to any questions you might have at the live question and answer session. Thanks again.